Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? Not a waiter, but I was a pastry chef at this big resort in Cape Cod. We got a special order from this guy who was coming in for his anniversary, Valentine's Day. He wanted his dessert to have "Will you marry me?" written on it so he could pop the question when it came out. He called ahead to the front and back kitchen, even came in himself that morning to make sure it was good to go. The whole crew was behind him. We had cooks all night coming in. He asked if it had happened yet. I wrote the inscription on the plate and dressed it to the nines with gold leaf and expensive chocolate. I'm taking a picture of the plate just before it's set to go out and notice our head waiter come in with a weird look on his face. He says plainly they don't need it. She broke up with him before the entrees hit the table. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there. It was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant including the bar and patio from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled, or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude however kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer, and how his date is going to be there at 7, he got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available, and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table, but because the amount of reservations we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50 the guy loses it, fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete shit because the only copy of the reservations for the night that is barely half over is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back. But by the time they got out he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant and the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 2. All 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying "Do not serve this man." TL, Dr. Salty dude without reservation steals reservation book and then tries to come back later. Old man proposed to old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped and fell and I assume broke something since he couldn't get back up and we had to call an ambulance. My manager had to drive her teeth to the hospital separately because she had taken them out to eat her soup, Lord knows why, and left them on the table in the confusion. A couple sitting at the bar were enjoying their night out. The man got up from his bar stool and left for the bathroom. As his girlfriend was alone, and absolutely wasted, at the bar, a random woman approached and revealed that she recently matched with the woman's boyfriend on Tinder and had hooked up a week earlier. The drunk girlfriend refused to believe this story, so the woman showed her his Tinder profile and their conversation. The boyfriend returned to a drunk, sobbing and screaming girlfriend. I felt like I was watching a reality TV show. It was incredible. The poor girl was basically carried out of the bar by her boyfriend of 3 years whom she just discovered has been cheating on her for who knows how long. It was the most dramatic moment I have ever experienced and it was absolutely none of my business. The most awkward. My first job as a waitress, a guy wanted to propose to his girlfriend. He came in 2 months before to book and had everything figured out. He planned to pop the question during dessert. We had champagne, balloons and sparklers prepped for the big moment. The time comes, he drops to one knee, gives a speech about his love for her. He asks, she says no, puts the ring in her bag, finishes her dessert and leaves. Quite possibly the most awkward thing I have had to witness. Alongside around 200 other people, the manager gave him everything for free. He felt that bad for him. Cringed inside every time I saw him after that. The most fucked up. I was working as a duty manager and one of the tills kept dropping off the network. As I was trying to fix it I could clearly hear the conversation of the table by the waiter's station. It started out sweet enough with her excitedly telling him she was pregnant. He went quiet and didn't say anything for a bit and then asked her what the plan was. She said she was keeping the baby. He said he didn't want kids and had told her this. She got upset and said she thought he'd be happy and change his mind when he found out. By this point I've fixed the till, but I'm unable to step away from this car crash. Turns out she stopped taking the pill without telling him, thinking she could turn him around. He said he knew she could be a little nuts sometimes but this was next level. He told her it was over and she could send someone to collect her things as he wanted nothing more to do with her. He called me over to pay the bill and just left. The guy never even shouted, he just calmly went "fuck this" and noped out of there. I couldn't even look her in the eye, just left her to leave in her own time. The funniest. Managing hotel room service where there was a Valentine's package that included getting each course of the special menu delivered to your room. More than a few couples thought it was a good idea to call for the next course and then start having sex. Having to help with deliveries as reception fucked up the bookings, I had the privilege of people answering the door naked, seeing sex toys strewn around in one where the other members of the threesome were carrying on in the background. After complaints of similar instances from my team, I had to take action. I ended up having to call the offending guests and tell them if they could not respect my team by answering the door in at least a closed dressing gown, they could come down and collect the rest of their meal from the restaurant. Bonus from the same night, had to call an ambulance for a woman with a dislocated shoulder. The guy admitted that they were trying to recreate a bukkake-type scene in the shower using conditioner as the cum. He slipped in the conditioner and fell on her. Busboy on Las Vegas Strip. An attempted proposal. Dude tries to set up sign with GF's friends for her to show up and see the ring near a fountain. Duck stole the ring, they found it 2 hours later as he dropped in the fountain. She still said yes. Free drinks were given. Not my table, but back in my Olive Garden days, we had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for attention of the surrounding strangers, then get down on one knee with silver band in hand, and ask his girlfriend/date to accept this promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish. In college I waited tables and Valentine's Day was always a good one in terms of tips. I once saw a couple come in to eat. Halfway through the dinner the man's wife shows up to surprise the couple. The wife took the wine bottle and poured the remnants on the husband's head, took off her ring and told the girlfriend she could have him. He tipped me a $100. I was working for a higher-end chain steakhouse in the northwest corner of Greater Los Angeles, in the Valley. Valentine's is obviously one of the top 5 busiest days of the year for us. We did about 500 covers between 5 and 10 p.m. It's also a restaurant with a very open concept floor plan. Booths along the 4 walls of the restaurant and an array of tables in the middle with no partitions or anything between them. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, dressed to the nines came in shortly after we opened and were seated in a table basically in the dead center of the dining room. They were very friendly and pleasant and I could tell that for them, dining at our restaurant was a really special treat, so I did everything in my power to make it special for them. When they're done, probably around 7, I brought their check which was around $300. When I came back to pick it up the guy had a super embarrassed look on his face and he said he thinks he left his wallet in the car. And the woman, who is embarrassed for him, doesn't have anything with her because her dress had no pockets and she didn't bring a purse. So he goes out and 5 minutes later comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He has left his wallet at home and asks if he can call back later with payment info. My GM won't let this fly because there's no collateral of any sort he can leave, so the guy has to drive home to Burbank to get his wallet while the woman waits, with her hair done and her red lipstick and her pretty dress, in the middle of the dining room on Valentine's Day. Now, on the best day with no traffic, never happens, it's at least 40 minutes each way from our restaurant to Burbank. She was there for almost 2 hours waiting for this guy. We were also embarrassed for her that the staff kept discreetly slipping her drinks and little amuse-bouche bites from the kitchen. It was one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in a restaurant. When he finally got back he was super apologetic to us and to her. He paid the check and tipped like 30% and they left. It was pretty obvious it was an honest mistake, but I still think about that couple from time to time and wonder how things worked out for them. Posting this from my phone, so apologies for any typos or formatting problems. I waited on one of the owners of the restaurant I was working at with his girlfriend and her twin kids, kinda weird, but probably didn't get a babysitter. He had been dating this woman for a number of months, but it was his first Valentine's Day on a date that wasn't his wife in decades. I don't think he was ready, but he was there to support the business. He broke down crying during dinner and it was heartbreaking. They left early. They came in at lunch the day after, so it was pretty empty, but it was still for a Valentine's Day date. They were both pretty nice at the beginning, the guy asked for a picture and whatnot. As the meal went on, the dude got progressively drunker and by the time I brought the check out, the woman was gone. When the dude gave me his card, he said, "I'll give you a bit of advice. If you're taking a girl out to break up with her, do it at a McDonald's and not an expensive restaurant." Younger couple came in for what I can only assume was a first date. Ordered a pizza but never ate, caught up in conversation I guess. Guy must have been feeling confident BC about 2 hours and he gets up, goes to the bathroom, and then decides to sit next to her in the booth rather than across from her where he was before. I swear to you she then got up and used the restroom about 10 minutes later, and when she came back, decided it would best if they didn't sit next to each other and sat in his original place. Please refrain from doing this. Had a man and woman sharing dessert and the man playfully put a bit of the ice cream on her nose. She then did the same and he did it back once more but with a different flavor of ice cream. She flipped out at him because you know I like chocolate the most, why would you waste it, you idiot. In the end she stormed out cause the man couldn't comprehend how much she was blowing up the situation. TLDR, man put ice cream on woman's nose, she is fine with it the first time, the second time she rages and leaves. I was working at a corporate sports bar that specialized in chicken wings. V-Day, like most days, was insanely busy. As the evening winds down, someone calls in saying they're a professional food critic and demanded to speak to the manager. After a 15-minute call, the manager tells us the critic rated us a B and said the food was good, but the service sucked. He said he would leave that last part out of his review if we comped his meal and gave him vouchers for free meals in the future, but he refused over and over to say where he worked. Confused, the manager talked to the server, who confirmed that the guy ate alone, ran her around ragged while shamelessly hitting on her, and left 0 tip. He wrote his phone number on the tip line. Thirsty bitch wanted free food because the server didn't call him immediately for a date. I had a Section 1 V-Day that had a marriage proposal, a 40th anniversary, and a breakup all at the same time. The breakup was the worst. The guy brought his high-class date a gift, a mini ceramic bear holding balloons. He presented it when I was at the table and she looked at it like it was a hot turd. I just knew this was not going to end well. She left at the end of the meal and must have said something because he stayed at the table for another 40 minutes, head down and crying. I felt bad. He saw the celebrations going on at the other tables. Not waitstaff, but I used to work front desk at a hotel. One Valentine's Day I was working the night shift, and this woman comes down with a cut above her eye looking like she just won a few rounds in the ring with a boxer. Woman starts sobbing and asks us to call the coos, which we do immediately. Turns out this girl's boyfriend just beat the shit out of her during a fight, and from what I could tell this probably wasn't the first time. So after the cops show up and haul the dude off, my manager offers her a different room on comp as we need to leave the guy's stuff where it is for him to pick up the next day. She accepts, and I go up with the woman to help her collect her stuff and move to the new room. There were a bunch of bottles of alcohol in the room, and she donated them to the front desk staff. I got a bottle of Hypnotic, and some vodka. Manager got a bottle of Patron. Cherry on top of everything, the dude's wife called later that night saying someone had stolen his card as he was out of town on a business trip. Never one to defend an abuser, I told her where she could find her husband. Fun times. Not a total disaster, but still not good. Had a table of 2 people, probably in their mid-40s last year. Took 45 minutes for this couple to get their entrees due to our kitchen being way too slammed. When they were dropped at the table, they immediately asked for toga boxes because they told their babysitter they'd be home by a certain time. I overheard the wife say, "Well, I guess this is why we don't celebrate Valentine's Day." The worst part was that they weren't angry, just very sad. My personal feelings about dining out on Valentine's Day aside, I felt so horrible that this couple clearly had put in an effort to have a nice night with each other only to have it go that way. We comped their meals, BTW.